side, even though you do not see the fire. I want to assure you that the fire is going to be in the ideas that you sparkled here today. I would not.
You will be the fire.
I would try and sparkle it from you. Okay. But colleagues, I think we have, you all know, Your Excellency. I'm not sure we need to introduce who Baba is. But I think you also know our sister Charlotte, as you can read in the agenda, Charlotte, to a point where we no longer see him as a former president. We almost see him like our father, almost the father of Africa. And so I'm quite privileged here today. What we would try and do is just have a back and forth discussion, and then I would like to also hear some of you jump in and share. And so, Baba, if you don't mind me, I will use the word Baba, because that is the one I like to call you. That brings you closer to home for me. I will start with Baba, actually. I've actually been intrigued listening to Baba over the years. But I know that President Obasanjo is a live example of someone who has witnessed power and powerlessness. President Obasanjo, at 38 years old, took over power in Nigeria, 1976, I think, as a soldier. At 42, he gave it back. Most of us at 38 years old, we would not give anything back. But he did. He gave back power to a civilian government, which then sparked Nigeria's democratic pathways. The country itself was almost 19 years old after independence. And I've always wondered, even after doing that, he went back to being a soldier. In the 90s, he was arrested, jailed, in fact, put on death row. And then somehow, he came back, and the people of Nigeria democratically elected him to be a president of that country. I've always wondered, Your Excellency, in those moments when you were on death row, what were you thinking about the state of democracy of your country? What did you see?
Dear brother, let me I will come to answer your question. But I want to thank President Goodluck Jonathan for making this a point of duty annually to set up dialogue on different aspects of democracy. I believe that democracy is not a destination, it is a journey. And if it is a journey, we must be talking about it. We must be dialoguing about it. We must be exchanging ideas and views about it. So I thank you for this. And of course, you know, if you call me and there is nothing really of life and death holding me back, you say jump, I will only ask you how high. So that's why I'm here. I want to thank Bishop Kuka for he's not here. But what I will say about him are for real.
He's right here.
Where is he? Bishop Kuka? Hey, you can be missed on the day of rapture. Because you are not where you are supposed to be. And when rapture takes place and you are not where you are supposed to be, we have gone and we will leave you here. I said to Bishop Kuka after that brilliant presentation, and I said, well spoken, really, really well spoken. But then I said to him, you know, I disagree with you on a number of points that you made. And then, of course, he disarmed me with his reply. He said, I'm a theorist. You are a practitioner. So, well, with that, what else can I say? But the point is this. Any human institution can die. For you to say democracy cannot die, I disagree. Any human institution, any human idea, any human organization, any human ideal can die. Anyway, that's for another day. Well, you have talked a little bit about my credentials. I believe very, very strongly, I am convinced that for a diverse society, for a pluralistic society, the form of government best that we know now is democratic form of government, because it allows for dialogue, discussion, conversation, talking among yourself, and that strongly I believe in. And we are, almost all of our countries in Africa, I don't know which country you will say, hasn't got diversity. Now, if we are all countries with diversity, then if democracy is good for diversity, then we should adopt it, we should embrace it, and we should practice it. So that was the reason why, when I became a military head of state, I handed over to a democratically elected president or group. Again, as you rightly pointed out, I have been a victim in the hand of a military dictator, and that I'm here with you now, it's the grace of God, because he said to a number of people that 3 of us are in detention or in prison, and 3 of us will never come out of detention or prison. 2 didn't come out. I'm not mocking them, I'm just saying the grace of God. I was the only one who came out of the 3 that he said will not come out alive. So, for that reason, you will understand how I feel when you talk of anything that is non-democratic or is whatever. But let us face the fact. I talk now of Western liberal democracy, which is what we inherited from our colonial masters. And you cannot blame them. That is what they have, and that is what they gave us. But for me, the context of that democracy is monarchy. That's why in Britain or any other country in Europe, they will talk of loyal opposition. And I think it's Bishop Kuka. How can you talk of loyal opposition? In almost all African languages that I have looked into, opposition is enemy. How can you talk of loyal enemy? What do you do with your enemy? You crush him. And you see the way our politicians practice it. Enemy must not be allowed to live because it's an enemy. So, the liberal, Western liberal democracy does not come up within the context of African culture and African tradition. In Africa, we never talk of government and opposition. We meet, we talk, and we reach consensus. And then we go out together and we implement. So I believe, you say why, then what was I thinking when I was in prison? You know, God is a wonderful God. While I was in prison, I believe I will come out of prison alive. I believe the man who put me in prison will not be the one that will release me. But how it will happen, I never knew. I never knew. And the day Abacha died, a warder came to me and said, "Sir, congratulations." I said, "Warder, what is the problem?" He said, "Our enemy that had died." I said, "Warder, who is your enemy now?" He said, "Abacha." I said, "Warder, you know if I have money and you need money, and you ask me, I will give. This kind lie you come now is not..." He said, "No be lie." I said, "All right." And when those who came in the evening resumed, another one came and said the same. I said, "What's your evidence?" He said, "Oh, CNN don't talk am." Now, anything CNN talk, it must be taken with some form of reality. And then that was it. A week after, another warder, because that's how we got our messages in Nigerian prison. It's only the warders or the prisoners who went out to do work outside who bring news, because we have no radio, no television, no newspaper. So another warder came and said, "Oga, you have been released." Though. I said, "Okay." The whole of that day, I didn't hear anything, but it has been announced that I have been released. So the superintendent came in the evening, and I said, he came, normally he would not come to my cell. That evening he came to my cell, and I was bold enough. I said, "Superintendent, when I come out of here, I will sue you for..." Yes. "You detain me the way you should not detain me." And then he said to me that, "Sir, you know that I don't get my instruction from radio and television. My headquarters has not passed instruction to me. When my headquarters passes instruction to me, I will act. The following morning at 9 o'clock, he came. He never saluted me when I was a prisoner. He saluted smartly. He opened the disorder of my cell and said, "You can go." And then I was taken to the airport. There was a presidential jet. It took me from Yola to Lagos, and from Lagos I came, and there was police escort. They took me to my farm, and I've remained on my farm since then. So that's how I felt about it, and that's what happened.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's humbling listening to this personal anecdote of your life and how it connects to the larger picture of Nigeria's and to an extent Africa's democratic journey. I would come back to you because you've raised quite a couple of interesting points, but let me tease out our sister Charlotte before we take the next step. Charlotte, you were entrusted, also young, with the management, I think the first female, if I'm not mistaken, in the country, with the management of the Electoral Commission of Ghana in 2015, at a time when the country was trying to re-emerge in its democratic image, to get a new image out of its democratic process. You managed very successfully, I would say, one of the examples of how elections should be run on this continent. We celebrated you back then, but I must say, I am sure that in those moments, there must have been a time when behind closed doors, you received some phone calls you didn't want to receive. You got some pressures that you didn't want to get. I'm trying to figure out at a personal level, what was the cost of you running an election that high stake? At you personally, what was the cost for you as a female running an election in a big democracy on the continent with all the challenges that Ghana went through? And by the way, an election that didn't necessarily go in favor of the incumbent, if I recall. What was the cost to you at a personal level? And how does that connect to the journey that the country has taken to now?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to His Excellency President Jonathan. It's a privilege to be here, and it's amazing that you're doing this because, like Baba said, I believe democracy dies. Democracy dies in darkness. Democracy dies when there's silence. So the fact that we have an annual dialogue to talk about democracy is one of the key things that would help to keep democracy alive. And it's also an honor to share a stage with an icon like Baba, who is outstanding on the continent. Yes, I was appointed to the Electoral Commission, first female. So that came with its own challenges. I think there were two major challenges, maybe three. Being female, I was told directly by several people that it was not a job for a female. Even my own father expressed the same fear. It was like, this is not a job for a woman. A lot of people thought I was too young, especially because I was coming after a legendary figure, Dr. Farijan, who had been there for more than 20 years. So the ageism, the sexism created their own problems. But there were also the normal...
How old were you then?
I was appointed in 2015. I was 46. 6. There are the usual troubles that come with chairing an electoral commission. I don't think those ones were unexpected. It's a job that everyone who's held it, I speak to my colleagues, especially across the African continent and the Commonwealth, and everybody has very similar challenges. There's misinformation, there's lies, there's attacks on everything you do. That kind of comes with the territory, so it's almost to be expected. But I think when you're a woman, it can take a different dimension. In terms of personal costs, I wouldn't say the phone calls and the pressure were the issues. Most people know I'm quite stubborn. So the kind of calls you think I received, I probably did not even receive because they knew I would not be amenable. The cost was really on a very personal level, attacks on my family, concerns about the safety of my children and my wider family. There were a lot of lies, and so the whole fabric of the family was affected. It's either they were worrying for themselves or they were constantly worrying about your own safety. My dad was still alive at the time, so that created other challenges. There was a time that a political party mob surrounded my dad's house, that they were going to burn it down because of actions they felt I had taken. So those were the kinds of personal pressures that as a woman, as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife, as a sister, you have to deal with. So those ones were more worrying than the pressure of people calling you to say, do this. I mean, if they say do it and it's not in line with the law, it's an easy answer. I wouldn't do it because it's not in line with the law. So that didn't really bother me too much. No.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to start with this personal side of actors of democratic processes, because I think sometimes we focus so much on the formal aspects and forgetting that, as the president said in the morning, behind every democratic institution are human beings. And Your Excellency, let me come back to you. Because in the morning, and you've repeated the same thing here in contesting the bishop's point of view. In the morning, you started off by saying democracy needs reform. You've been around for a while, Baba, even though I saw you playing football recently, even better than some of us. In your opinion, what are the three big things in that democratic or democracy chain that you think needs to be reformed for Africa to reclaim its true democratic process?
Thank you very much, my dear brother. I thought I'd touch on them in the morning when Anne unceremoniously invited me to speak without giving me any warning. The first thing we must admit and accept is that democracy, even as defined by the American president, as I said in the morning, is meant to be the whole population. The whole population. Government of the people. Of the people. He did not say of some people. Of the people. By the people. For the people. And let me put it this way. In a situation today where in a population of 100, you will register 60 for election. And the day of election, 30 will come to vote. And the one who wins, only 12 vote for him or her. What is the democracy in that? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. So out of 100, only 12 have given this man mandate. Now that can't be. It cannot be right. We have to do something about that. Another thing that cannot be right is when winner takes all. If you are talking of the people, all the people, for as long as you leave out almost 50% of those who even participate, let us leave out how many there are, then you are actually keeping out 50% of those who should be part of the government, as far as I'm concerned. So that too cannot be right. Winner takes all. It cannot be right. And these two that I've explained, they are not in line with African culture. They are not in line with African tradition. They are not in line with African way of running affairs, whether at the village level, where I come from, I'm a village boy. And if you take me out of the village, you can take village out of me. Now, and I say, if you went to my village 60 years ago, and government wants to do something, and then they come, and my sister here, and you are living in my village, and they say, my sister, and the village elders and community leaders know that my sister is light-fingered. And they say, oh, he will be the treasurer. They will say, no.
Baba, did you say she's light-fingered?
They will say, no. No, her farm is too far. When we need her, we will not be able to rush to her farm. But your farm is nearby. We call it Etile. That's the farm that is very nearby. Now, you will be the one. Now, that is the way they go about it. They won't say to her that no. But today, that same my village, if you go there, she has money. She will spread money around. Huh? And even if they didn't want to give her, she will make sure that her money gives it to her. So we may not now also be talking of monocracy instead of democracy. And that is a problem. In the morning, the president talked about corruption. We take corruption in terms of, not only in terms of money. Corruption, somebody told me, those who manipulate elections, they started from the registration of parties and then registration of voters. And then, of course, how they place the voting boxes. Some will not get to where they should get to. And the point really is this: these changes that are the one I'm talking about in terms of the context and then the content. I was surprised when a British minister told me that even in Britain, they find dead people voting. Even in Britain. Those are the people who gave us, from whom we inherit this Western liberal democracy. If they are displeased with it, shouldn't we rethink what we have inherited? Let me give you another one. Another British friend of mine we were talking, and he said, look, this democracy has gone awry for us. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, Sunak was not voted for as prime minister. And Sunak became the prime minister. That cannot be what the American president definition of democracy is about. Now, if these are the ways that those who even gave us this Western liberal democracy are thinking, they are interrogating what they have, shouldn't we be rethinking and be interrogating and see that this is not delivering? Now, what is government about? Whether the government, no matter how you define the government is for the protection of life and property, welfare and well-being of individual, protection of life and property, and catering for the welfare and well-being. Now, if a government cannot assure you of protection of your life and your property, and if a government cannot assure you of your well-being and your welfare, so what does it matter how it comes about? And I have had people in Nigeria say to me, now democracy we go chop. You talk of democracy, now democracy man go chop. You won't eat democracy. You want democracy to deliver what they call democracy dividend. Democracy dividend. And when democracy is not delivering democracy dividend, that democracy is probably in the intensive care unit.
Baba,
Yeah.
before you drop the mic.
Now let me put the third point. I talk of the content, the context, the content, and then the practice. These are the three areas where there must be reform. And any human organization that is not subject to reform, periodic reform even, it will get rotten, and it will die.
Thank you very much. In fact, the practice part is what I wanted to come back and push you on, because you mentioned it in the morning. Because there's also a contradiction in what you say, Baba. There's a focus on elections as the prism through which we judge democracy and the growth of democracy. But in other circles, and I think the bishop said it in the morning, or the president himself, elections are almost an end result. There's a whole process that happens between the state and its citizens before we get to elections. And that process characterizes to an extent what forms or how people see themselves in a democracy. I wanted to, before I go back to my sister, on the practice element, because I'm assuming this is where it lands. How do we sustain the connection between the state, or the trust between the state and its citizens, even at the time when we contest the Westphalian model of electoral democracy?
For as long as our emphasis is on the election, and those who are trying to become executive, governor, executive, whatever, president, whatever. And we do not care adequately on how, what I would call pre-election, and then post-election. Then, for as long as that is not paid enough attention, so long will our democracy be wobbling and then die. You see, for leadership, I just mentioned, I hope my sister didn't take offense when I use her as example, that in our society, culturally, traditionally, what matters is character. And they will say, oh, you, first, whose child? Where does he come from? Oh, what sort of person is he or she? But today, do we even know what is the background of the people contesting? In some cases, the only thing that is not fake about them is that they are human beings.
Baba, but wholly there, I want to come back on leadership because it's a whole segment of our discussion. You've also, you heard Baba's perception on the role of elections in sustaining a democracy. But let's shift a little bit to the topic Baba just ignited, leadership. But leadership of institutions. Are we suffering on the continent from a crisis of leadership? And we will, before the end of this discussion, pivot towards solutions on how we sustain democracy, because this is what our session is about. But do we have a crisis? You've now been engaged in regional, policy advisory discussions. Is the continent suffering from a crisis of institutions, or as somebody would say, a crisis of strong men?
I don't think it's just the continent. I think it's a global crisis of leadership. We're seeing even democracies that are over 200 years old grappling with very similar issues to what we are also trying to grapple with. In the case of Africa, specifically West Africa, I would think it's a crisis of both. It's a crisis of institutions not having the independence and the structures that they should have to support democracy properly. And so it makes the strong men seem even stronger. We talk about democracy backsliding. And yes, it is. All the statistics, the data shows that democracy is backsliding in Africa. But why is it backsliding? It's the same old issues. It's manipulation of constitutions. It's the clamping down, closing down of the civic space. It's flawed elections, or elections that the people, the voters, do not accept as credible elections. And so we've had several cases where observers would even sign off elections, and then the countries go into crisis because the people do not accept the results, and it becomes a coup. We've had people trying to extend tenure through constitutional manipulations. So is the strong man syndrome meeting a weak institutions? So it's all of that coming together. And then on the other hand, you have a very young population that has more access to information and opportunities to engage than before. And so the level of frustration is higher. And when you have young people who are facing unemployment and they feel disengaged from society, Baba talked about inclusion. They don't feel included after election day. We should expect very high levels of frustration. And so when you see research that says that, for instance, 51% of Ghanaians think that where there's abuse of elected power, a coup d'etat is the solution. It's actually easy to understand because the last coup in Ghana was 44 years ago. So a lot of the young people who are actually voters now, and probably the majority of voters, have never experienced military dictatorship. So our perspective is very different from theirs. And so when they see abuse of power, they see corruption, they don't see access to power, they don't see any opportunities for inclusion, for having a say in how they are governed, we should not be surprised at the results we're getting. And so ultimately we need to do better. The leaders need to do better. The institutions, African Union, ECOWAS, they need to do better. We need to strengthen those institutions so they are not seen as an ECOWAS of leaders or an AU of leaders, because that's all we see from the people perspective. We see them in conferences with themselves, and we don't see them engaging the people. And so when ECOWAS tells us, for instance, that they have the policy on good governance has zero tolerance for coups, we say yes. But when there's coups, ECOWAS is very loud in condemning coups. But when there's constitutional manipulation of flawed elections, ECOWAS would deploy quiet diplomacy. That's why the people are not happy.
Thank you very much. Charlotte, looks like you touched a nerve. I'm going to come to the audience, but I had a discussion with President Jonathan when we were in Banjul about your last point, and I want to hear Baba's take on this, because Baba, you are friends with quite a lot of these people who manipulate constitutions. When we have leadership that manipulates constitutions, that legally it might be, but that those constitutions that are manipulated become the source of discontent and disconnect between the state and its people, to a point where we then have soldiers leave their barrack to take power. Who are we to blame in a situation like that? But even personally, Baba, because I know you've traveled this continent, you've talked to those that have manipulated constitutions continuously. You've talked to those that are struggling to even know their left from their right, but are still staying in power. They don't want to leave. Where are we going? Where did we get it wrong on our leadership of the continent?
I don't think we can blame ourselves as the victim, because we are victim. But I will tell you a true story. As you rightly said, I go to all of them, and there's no head of state or president in Africa that I will hesitate, if I have to see, that I will hesitate to see. But let me give you an example. When President Kagame was trying to have, I think, a third term, anywhere I went in the West, they will point out to me and say, look, this. So I decided to go to President Kagame. And President Kagame gave me the history of his effort to, if you like, mentor a successor. And he gave me the history of two of such mentors that have betrayed him and betrayed the country. and I think have left the country. Then one of them was not too long ago killed in South Africa. He gave me this. And he then said to me, you know the history of genocide in this country, where almost 1 million people were killed, and the world was for 1 month watching. And what I will want is not for us to have that type of situation again. I will, of course, agree with him on that. So I said, okay, thank you. Then I want to know what's going on in the street. So I bought an artificial mustache. And then I went to a local hotel. And then I went into the street. And I asked 10 people. And 8 out of 10 said, look, if this man is ruling us the way he's ruling us, if he wants 10 terms, we will give him. Now, if you get that from the people of the country, who am I? And tell me, who am I to say, because it has amended the Constitution, and the Constitution is perfectly amended, and it's going along the amended Constitution. Now, that is one story. Then there's the story of another president, I will not mention him, and you will forgive me, an African president. And we were together. I was president then, and one Haba, who was in the National Assembly, House of Representatives, had decided to impeach me as president. So I was talking with this president, African president, outside Nigeria, and in fact outside Africa. We were in Europe. And he called me and said, hey, my brother, what is this nonsense that you people in Nigeria want to introduce to Africa? Somebody will say he's impeaching the president. I said, yes. I said, our constitution allows that if the president commits any misconduct, he can be impeached. He said, go back home and amend that constitution. Now, he could go back home and amend his constitution. I cannot, but he didn't understand. Well, that president has been as long as, I don't know.
He's still in power.
That's another one. So the point really is that it's very difficult to judge, because one president rightly mentioned to me that, look, Europe was not developed on the basis of changing monarchies. And if Europe has not had those monarchies that developed Europe at the time that the countries of Europe were developed, maybe it will have been different. America was a different ball game. America establish itself out of protest against Europe. And even America, until the time of Roosevelt, you could be president for as long.
Baba, are you saying that in Africa we don't need it?
Just wait. I don't believe that you should be president for life. But I believe that certain fundamentals must be accepted. And it doesn't matter who comes or who goes, those fundamentals must be stuck to. Look, let me take my own country, Nigeria, now, so that it doesn't matter what you say about Nigeria now. The issue of security is fundamental. It doesn't matter what you say about Nigeria now. The issue of peace is fundamental. It doesn't matter what you say about Nigeria today. The issue of unity, of purpose is fundamental. Stability is fundamental. Economy is fundamental. So, for me, it doesn't really matter if those fundamental issues are taken as sacrosanct and they are looked at regularly, persistently, and in the right way.
Baba, but isn't that dangerous? Wouldn't that be dangerous that any president or leader can pinpoint something that is so fundamental in the country that determines why they should stay for life? Isn't that a dangerous path?
No, there's nothing like that. Look, God doesn't create anybody to stay for life in anything.
But we have some that are reaching 100 already and still in power.
Well, I know where you come from. I know what you are saying. No, but on a serious note, I think it is wrong idea for any human being to say that he wants to finish. What are you finishing? There's no finishing in God's work, and there's no finish. And God's work is your country. Your country is God's work. You cannot say you finish it. And people will government will come, government will go. I enjoy the life I'm living now. If I have been there in government, I won't be here with President Jonathan, and I won't have Bishop Kuka around me. He is a bishop, but I will get to heaven before him.
Thank you, Baba. Thank you. But maybe we get some questions from the audience. I know you've been listening.
If that I wanted a third term, I think I'm not a fool. If I wanted a third term, I know how to go about it. And there's no Nigerian dead or alive that will say, I told him I wanted a third term. None. And I keep telling them that, look, if I wanted to get debt relief, which is more difficult than getting a third term, and I got it. If I wanted a third time, I would have got it. So, but you are right. If you put it across and your people agree to it, whichever way, who am I to say you haven't got it right? I know that the best is done when you are young, ideal, and vibrant and dynamic. When you are kuje, then you don't have the best. And but some people believe that unless they are there, nobody else. They will even tell you that they haven't got anybody else. And I believe that that is a sin against God. Because if God takes you away, which God can do anytime, then somebody else will come. And that somebody else may do better or may do worse. I don't say it will do better. He may do better, he may do worse. But somebody else will come.
Thank you, Baba. Maybe, Charlotte, before I come to you, I'm told that Governor Peter Obi would like to say a few words. I know they're killing me with time, but he's spoken a lot about integrity in leadership. So I'd love for us to give him.
If you want to serve, you can actually do whatever you want to show that is exemplary within the period allowed. You can do it in 1 year. Just think of Ghana. Things are changing in 6 months. So you don't need to be there for eternity. And there's so many competent leaders in Africa. If the term is 2 years, serve 2 years and go. Another person will come and continue from. Once you show an exemplary life or direction, nobody can change it. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. And I think President Obasanjo, I think there was one question directed to you, one last word, and then I would ask the last question to the President.
There was a question on whether elections are credible when the opposition wins. The thing is, elections are not a one-day event. It's a whole cycle. So we cannot judge the credibility of an election just based on the outcome of the election and if it is accepted. Most times when the opposition wins, it creates a peaceful atmosphere, and so the election is usually judged credible. However, an election is only credible if the election complies with the law, because every election is governed by a set of laws and the Constitution. And when the election also complies with the principles of electoral integrity, inclusiveness, people having the right to register, to vote, the freedom to vote, the counting is done in a credible manner, and the outcomes announced are in line with the votes that the people cast. So that's the only time we can say an election is credible, and not just because the outcome favored an opposition party.
Thank you very much. President Obasanjo, I want you to close this session with two advice. We have so many young presidents coming up now on this continent, which is quite good, I have to say. If you were to meet with 4 of them, what 3 values and principles would you ask them to never let go as they try to sustain their democracy?
I'll come to your question. But this issue of opposition winning, ensuring or giving indication of credibility of election, I think it's also part of what we get from our friends and development partners from the West. My friend Bush Jr., I think he's 43rd president of America. I think he's 43rd. Who will still remain friends anytime I go to America and I have a call on him. So my daughter contested the election as senator, and she lost. And when I saw him, I told him, I said, oh, my daughter contested the election as a senator, and she lost. He said that the election must be credible. Now, but that to me, it's not really the way that it should be looked at. But of course, that's the way if my daughter contested the election and she lost, it means that I didn't interfere with the election and all that. Okay. So that is that. I just believe that what I said earlier, there's a lot that should go into democracy before election, and there's even a lot more that should go into democracy after election, and democracy dividend must be felt by everybody. There should be nobody left out from benefiting from democracy dividend. Now, you said that we are getting young chief executive at our national levels now. Yes, we are. But I was fairly young when I left as military head of state. I left at 42. I came back 20 years later at 62, still comparatively young. And then I left after 8 years at 70, still comparatively young. And if I have not given up, now officially at 88, still comparatively young, then I can say to these young African presidents, there is life after the State House. I think that's very, very important. And if they know that there is life after State House, I think they will be a little bit along the path of rectitude. They will do things right, knowing that there's still a lot of them. I have also suggested to the AU, part of the problem of some of the young ones is what do they do? What do they do if you leave government as head of state at 50, whatever? What do you do for the rest of your life? And they don't think of what to do. And I have suggested that AU should establish, there are some universities now that AU, and give them office secretary. Let them first of all write their memoir. Secondly, let them go around and give talk. For a meeting like this, you get them to come and give talk. President Mahama will make them comfortable for the 2 or 3 nights that they will be here. President Jonathan will keep their company. I think we should not let them feel frustrated or idle. I will be specific. The former president of Republic of Benin, Boniyayi, was put in house arrest. And I was really, really worried. Almost every day he was calling me, what can I do? So I wasn't close enough to his predecessor to be able to approach him. And if I approach him and he didn't respond, what do I do? So I went to President Ouattara. I say, hey, you are doyen of Francophone leaders. Why don't you handle this? He said, no. He can't handle it. So I said, what else can I do now? So I jumped inside the plane and I went to Paris. I didn't book any appointment. And I went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Fortunately or unfortunately, the minister was not in town. So the ambassador who was on the desk of Africa desk received me. And I said, look, I have come here. First of all, he said, look, I cannot take you to my office. I will have to take you to the foreign minister's office and receive you there. I said, take me anywhere. So when we got to the foreign minister's office, I said, look, the first thing, what is French policy for Francophone Africa? He said, now we don't talk of Francophone Africa. French policy, first of all, is the security of 15% French population who are either of African descent or living in Africa. The second is we go for business, anywhere we can see business. The third is with you, 54, AU, we 27, if in international meeting we come together, we should carry the day. I said, all right, thank you very much. Now, I come to talk about the situation in the Republic of Benin. And he said, no, we cannot come into that. So, but then he said to me, talk to President Kagame, and President Kagame may be able to solve the problem for you. Now, I have to go to Paris to get solutions for. So, of course, I'm very close to President Kagame. So I phoned President Kagame. 48 hours later, President Kagame has done it. President Boniai has been released from house arrest. Now, what I'm saying here, you say what the problem of the young ones must also be of interest, not only nationally, but regionally and continentally.
Yes.
And where possible, we should help them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Baba, I know my sister there is going to associate in UNDP, but most precisely to thank President Obasanjo and my sister Charlotte. Again, democracy is not a result, it's a process that needs to be nurtured. Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause.
Oh my God. I need a young man up here to compete with His Excellency. Let's give them another round of applause. Unfortunately, it is time that isn't our best ally. Otherwise, I am sure we have all enjoyed the very experienced Obasanjo, Baba himself, and the anecdotes he has shared throughout his life journey. Thank you so very much, Charlotte, as well.
The call for all our brothers and sisters in the AES Sahel regions, Mali, Burkina Faso, in Niger, who are in prison now because they have decided to stand for democracy. I want to invite you to have a deep thinking and thought for these individuals who have never given up and will continue to push. As they say, not pushing against someone specific, but continue to push for the ideal of democracy we want, the freedom of speech, the freedom of movement, the freedom of expressing ourselves. We have many of them now living in exile. Right. It's a great moment as we're celebrating democracy to think about them, to make them understand they are not alone. Wherever they are, whatever they're doing, we will always stand by them, by their side. And I will end by thanking so much President Goodluck Jonathan for whatever you've done for Mali during the mediation work you've been doing, and Anne, who've been going back and forth, and the whole team of the foundation. And I will never end up with saying thank you, Baba, for your guiding us as African youth, also your very constructive and productive advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Your Excellency, former President Obasanjo, and all other dignitaries here present. You know, as a lecturer of a state-run university in Liberia, when I was told by the founder of this foundation that you may remark, I started doing some research, but be as it may, I cannot read all of what I've done because of the time we are standing against. As a speaker of Liberia's House of Representatives, I see firsthand the role Parliament must play, not only in legislating, but in safeguarding democratic soul of our nations. Let us leave this dialogue not only with ideas, but with commitments to transparency, to inclusion, and to the kind of leadership that places people above power. I want to say thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the foundation. Thank you to the organizer. I hope to participate in next year's dialogue. May God bless you.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency, as well. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, shall we...